Wanted y'all to fix it.
You know, it's so old to talk about, to bring up, to keep harping on it. It's like, she got somebody too. I got 2 Olympic gold medals, 19 world championships. Why would I have to be second place to another woman for? Like, what do I look like?
Stop scrolling right now, because what just went down has the internet on fire and tensions at an all-time high. Claressa Shields, one of the most dominant athletes alive, is reportedly seeing red after Papoose was publicly questioned about his ex, Remy, and the fallout is anything but quiet. What should have been a routine question turned into an emotional landmine, and insiders say the energy shifted instantly. Faces tightened, voices changed, and behind the scenes, things allegedly got heated fast. Because here's the part nobody expected. This wasn't just about an ex. This was about respect, boundaries, and a history that refuses to stay in the past. Sources claim Claressa felt blindsided, not just by the question itself, but by how casually it reopened a chapter she thought was closed. And once that door cracked open, emotions poured out in a way no one in the room was prepared for. Social media clocked it immediately. Clips started circulating. Fans began arguing. Some accused the interviewer of crossing a line. Others claimed the reaction said everything. And now, with whispers of a tense confrontation and alleged words exchanged off camera, people are asking the same question. Did this moment expose cracks nobody was supposed to see? So don't blink, because what allegedly happened after that question, and how Claressa responded, might change how everyone looks at the situation moving forward. The moment didn't look explosive at first. That's what makes it terrifying. A routine interview setup, neutral lighting, casual smiles, and then one question, simple on the surface, reckless underneath, landed like a match dropped into gasoline. When Papoose was asked about his ex, Remy, insiders say the temperature in the room changed instantly. Not awkward, not uncomfortable, charged. The kind of charged that makes everyone suddenly aware they're standing too close to something volatile. And somewhere just off camera, Claressa Shields felt it hit before anyone else even processed what had been asked. According to multiple whispers from people who claim they were present, Claressa wasn't just annoyed, she was blindsided. This wasn't a planned segment. This wasn't framed as a respectful, retrospective question. It was dropped casually, almost flippantly, as if the past were just content. And that's where the problem started. Because for Claressa, this wasn't the past. This was a boundary being tested in public, without warning, without consent. And sources say her reaction was immediate, even if viewers didn't see it yet. People in the room noticed the shift. Claressa's posture allegedly stiffened. Her expression changed. Not dramatic, controlled, dangerous. The kind of calm that boxers have right before they explode. And while Papoose reportedly answered carefully, choosing his words with visible caution, insiders say it didn't matter. The damage was already done. The question existed. The door had been opened. And once that happens, you don't get to decide how someone reacts to it. Behind the scenes, sources claim Claressa confronted the situation almost immediately. Not screaming, not performing, but demanding clarity. Why was that question asked? Who approved it? And why was her presence, her position, her relationship treated like an afterthought? People close to her say this hit a nerve that went deeper than jealousy or insecurity. It was about respect, about not being reduced to a footnote while someone else's history took center stage. And here's where the narrative starts twisting. Some insiders insist Papoose himself was caught off guard by the question, that he didn't expect to be pulled backward publicly when he's been moving forward privately. Others claim he saw it coming and tried to deflect, knowing exactly how sensitive the topic would be. Either way, the result was the same. Claressa felt exposed. And when someone who lives by discipline and control feels exposed, the reaction isn't quiet. Social media didn't wait for confirmation. Clips, short, cropped, stripped of context, started circulating within minutes. Fans froze frames, zoomed expressions, read body language like it was evidence. Comment sections turned into battlegrounds. Some accused the interviewer of instigating drama. Others claimed Claressa's reaction proved insecurity. And that's when the situation escalated from a tense moment into a full-blown internet storm. Insiders say Claressa was furious not because Remy's name was mentioned, but because it was done publicly, casually, and without regard for the present. One source described it as being asked to stand still while someone rewrites your relationship in real time. That kind of disrespect doesn't fade quickly. And according to people close to Claressa, she felt like she was being tested, like the world wanted to see how much she'd tolerate before snapping. What made it worse was the timing. Claressa was already under intense pressure, juggling public expectations, personal life scrutiny, and the constant demand to be flawless. This question, dropped without warning, felt like one more attempt to pull her out of position. And boxers don't take that lightly. Allegedly, she made it clear backstage that this wasn't acceptable, that lines had been crossed, and that she wasn't going to smile through it for anyone's comfort. Papoose, according to some insiders, tried to de-escalate. He allegedly reassured her that the question didn't reflect his priorities, that his answer was measured, that he wasn't feeding the narrative. But reassurance after the fact doesn't erase the moment, especially when cameras are involved, especially when the internet is already choosing sides, and especially when a woman feels like her presence is being overshadowed by a story she didn't consent to revisit. As the interview wrapped, the tension didn't dissipate, it followed them. Sources say there were hushed conversations, sharp exchanges, and a clear sense that something had gone wrong, not explosively, strategically, the kind of wrong that lingers. And when Claressa reportedly left the area without engaging further, people knew this wasn't over. Because silence, in moments like this, is never peace. It's restraint. Online, the narrative spiraled. Some fans claimed Claressa overreacted. Others defended her fiercely, pointing out how often women are expected to absorb disrespect quietly. Old interviews resurfaced. Past quotes were weaponized. And suddenly, a single question had reopened years of discourse about boundaries, exes, and who gets to define a relationship publicly. Insiders warned that what the public saw was only the surface, that the real confrontation didn't happen on camera. That words were exchanged later, privately, with far more weight than any viral clip could capture. And according to one source, Claressa made one thing very clear. This would not be brushed off. Not now, not later, not ever. By the end of the night, the room had emptied, but the tension hadn't. Phones buzzed, group chats lit up, and one sentiment kept repeating among those close to the situation. This wasn't just a bad question. It was a warning shot. And if anyone thought Claressa Shields was going to let it slide quietly, they didn't understand who they were dealing with. What happened next is where everything stopped being a moment and turned into a full-blown situation. Because once the cameras were off and the controlled smiles disappeared, insiders say the emotional temperature spiked fast. Claressa Shields wasn't interested in letting the narrative spin without correction, and people close to her say the frustration that had been tightly contained finally demanded space. This wasn't about optics anymore. This was about drawing a line so clear it couldn't be blurred by edits or excuses. According to multiple accounts from people who claim to have been nearby, Claressa addressed the situation head-on, making it clear that what upset her wasn't jealousy or insecurity, but the sheer audacity of centering an old relationship while she was standing right there. One source described her tone as controlled fury, not loud, not chaotic, but razor-sharp. The kind of anger that doesn't need to raise its voice because everyone in the room already knows it's serious. And that tone alone reportedly stopped conversations mid-sentence. Papoose, meanwhile, was said to be caught in an impossible position. Insiders claim he was frustrated too, not at Claressa, but at the situation itself. He allegedly felt the question was irresponsible, that it dragged his past into a space where he was trying to move forward. Some sources insist he immediately distanced himself from the framing, emphasizing that he wasn't entertaining comparisons, narratives, or recycled drama. But damage control after the fact doesn't undo the spark. And Claressa wasn't in the mood for explanations that came too late. What made the tension even heavier was the presence of third-party reactions. People watching from the sidelines reportedly froze, unsure whether to intervene or step back. This wasn't a performative argument meant for attention. It was personal. And those are the moments no one wants to be accidentally standing too close to. One insider described the atmosphere as oxygen-deprived, like everyone was holding their breath waiting to see which way it would go. As word of the confrontation spread, social media turned ruthless. Clips were chopped down to seconds. Facial expressions were analyzed like crime footage. Fans argued over who should have done what differently. Some blamed the interviewer. Some blamed Papoose for not shutting the question down harder. Others, predictably, turned their scrutiny toward Claressa, accusing her of being too emotional or territorial. That narrative lit another fuse. Because anyone familiar with Claressa's career knows she doesn't explode without reason. Supporters fired back just as aggressively. They pointed out the double standard. How often women are expected to sit politely while their partners' pasts are dragged into public conversations. how rarely boundaries are respected when there's viral potential involved. And suddenly, this wasn't just about one question. It was about who gets to feel comfortable in public spaces and who is expected to swallow discomfort for everyone else's entertainment. Then came the ripple effect involving Remy. Despite her not being present, her name trended. Old interviews resurfaced. Fans pulled quotes from years ago, forcing them into a narrative that had nothing to do with the current moment. Insiders say this escalation was exactly what Claressa feared, that one careless question would reopen a chapter that had already been closed, dragging multiple people into a mess no one asked for. Behind the scenes, the pressure intensified. Claressa reportedly made it clear she wouldn't tolerate future situations where her presence was treated as secondary. According to one source, she said something to the effect of needing respect to be proactive, not reactive. That message traveled fast. Publicists took notes. Producers adjusted talking points. Interviewers suddenly became more cautious, because when someone with Claressa's discipline and reputation draws a boundary, people listen. Papoose, sources claim, tried to publicly keep things calm while privately acknowledging the seriousness of the moment. He allegedly understood why Claressa was upset and didn't dismiss it. But understanding doesn't erase impact. And the internet wasn't interested in nuance. It wanted conflict. It wanted winners and losers. It wanted a viral villain. And that hunger kept the story alive far longer than the moment itself. What's rarely discussed is the emotional toll. Insiders say Claressa felt like her achievements, her presence, her identity were momentarily overshadowed by a narrative that wasn't hers. For someone who's fought her entire life to be recognized on her own terms, that cut deep. And it wasn't something she was willing to ignore for the sake of being cool or unbothered. As the hours passed, the situation didn't cool, it calcified. Opinions hardened. Fan camps formed. Commentators began treating speculation as fact. And while public figures involved remained mostly quiet, the silence was anything but calm. It was strategic, because speaking too soon would only feed the chaos. But staying silent also meant letting strangers define the story. Insiders say the biggest misconception is that this was about insecurity. In reality, it was about agency. About not allowing a narrative to be built over your head while you're expected to stand there smiling. And that's why Claressa's reaction resonated so strongly with some people and triggered others. It forced an uncomfortable question. Who gets to decide what's fair game in public conversation? By the end of the day, one thing was clear to everyone involved. This wasn't a passing headline. It was a moment that had shifted dynamics permanently. Interviews would be different, boundaries would be firmer. And the next move, whatever it was, would be watched under a microscope. Because when tension like this erupts, it doesn't disappear. It waits. By the time the internet thought it had fully digested the moment, insiders insist the real consequences were only beginning to surface. Because what happened didn't just bruise egos, it reset power dynamics. Claressa Shields didn't cool down in silence. She recalibrated. People close to her say she went quiet not because she regretted her reaction, but because she was deciding how much access anyone would ever get to her personal life again. And once that decision was made, the shift was unmistakable. Sources claim Claressa became hyper-aware of how quickly narratives form when silence creates a vacuum. She allegedly replayed the moment over and over, not the question itself, but the implications. How easily a relationship can be reframed by outsiders. How fast respect can be tested when entertainment value enters the equation. And most importantly, how often women are expected to absorb discomfort without response. That realization hardened something in her, not bitterness, resolve. Meanwhile, Papoose was reportedly dealing with a different kind of tension. Insiders say he felt pulled in two directions, wanting to protect his present while being unable to erase the public weight of his past. Friends claim he was frustrated that a question he didn't ask, in a setting he didn't control, now threatened to define weeks of discourse. According to whispers, he made it clear privately that he wasn't interested in fueling comparisons, triangles, or recycled storylines. But in the court of public opinion, intentions rarely survive. What truly escalated the situation was how quickly the narrative mutated online. Commentary channels began framing the incident as a test of Claressa's confidence. Others painted it as proof of unresolved history. And once those frames locked in, nuance died. Claressa's restraint was called rage. Her boundaries were labeled insecurity. And the very discipline that defines her career was twisted into something ugly by people who'd never stepped into her world. Then Remy Ma was dragged deeper into the discourse, despite having no direct involvement in the moment. Her name trended alongside speculative headlines. Old lyrics were quoted out of context. Past interviews were repurposed to fit a narrative that served clicks, not truth. Insiders say this secondary wave is what solidified Claressa's fury. Because now the ripple wasn't just about her, it was pulling multiple people into a public spectacle none of them consented to. Behind closed doors, sources claim there were difficult conversations. Not explosive arguments, but tense recalibrations. Claressa allegedly made it clear that moving forward, access would be conditional. Questions would be screened. Boundaries would be explicit. And any attempt to center her relationship around anyone else's history would be shut down immediately. This wasn't a threat, it was a standard. And once it was set, people listened. Industry insiders noticed the change fast. Interviewers grew cautious. Publicists tightened language. Events that once felt casual now felt curated with surgical precision. Claressa wasn't retreating, she was controlling the frame. And that control unsettled people who had grown comfortable treating her personal life like open terrain. Because when someone who thrives in pressure decides to reclaim the narrative, the ground shifts under everyone's feet. Papoose, according to those close to him, supported the boundary. Insiders say he understood that the moment crossed a line, even if unintentionally. But support doesn't erase tension. The incident reportedly forced difficult reflections about visibility, respect, and how public relationships are navigated when history refuses to stay buried. And while neither party fed the drama publicly, the silence between statements spoke volumes. The internet, however, refused to move on. Every appearance was scrutinized. Every post was analyzed for subtext. A neutral caption became a response. A lack of response became a statement. And the pressure to clarify grew louder by the day, but insiders insist Claressa had no intention of explaining herself to people committed to misunderstanding her. To her, the moment didn't require justification, it required change. What's most striking, according to those watching closely, is how this incident altered perception. For some, Claressa became a symbol of refusing to be minimized. For others, she became a convenient target for projecting discomfort with assertive women. Either way, the reaction exposed more about the audience than the people involved. And Claressa, seasoned by years of combat, both literal and metaphorical, noticed. As weeks passed, the chaos slowly cooled, but it never disappeared. It settled into something quieter, more dangerous. A reminder. Insiders say this moment will follow all three names involved, not as a scandal, but as a cautionary tale. About what happens when past narratives are revived without consent. About how quickly respect can be tested in public spaces. And about how silence, when chosen deliberately, can be more powerful than any clapback. The final twist? Sources claim Claressa doesn't see this as unfinished business. To her, the message was delivered the moment she refused to play along. There will be no emotional outbursts, no long explanations, no public reconciliation tour, just distance, boundaries, and forward motion. And for someone who's built her life on discipline, that may be the loudest statement of all. Because in the end, this wasn't about an ex. It was about presence, about who gets centered, and about what happens when someone decides they will no longer shrink to make a moment more comfortable for everyone else. If you're still here, then you already know this moment wasn't just another viral clip that fades by tomorrow. This was one of those situations that exposed how fast boundaries get crossed when clicks matter more than respect, and how quickly narratives get written without the people involved having any real say. What happened with Claressa Shields, Papoose, and the sudden resurfacing of Remy Ma isn't finished echoing yet, whether people admit it or not. And here's the part you don't want to ignore. Stories like this don't end when the internet gets bored. They resurface when someone finally speaks, when an interview goes slightly off script, or when one sentence shifts the entire narrative overnight. If you walk away now, you're trusting headlines to tell you what actually happened, and headlines never tell the full story. So don't stay silent. If you clocked something off about that moment, if you felt the tension before anyone said it out loud, say it in the comments. This is where real conversations happen, not in clipped videos or reaction thumbnails. Hit like if you believe boundaries should matter more than viral moments. Subscribe if you want to stay ahead of the next shift, not catch up after the narrative's already been twisted. Because when this story resurfaces, and it will, You'll want to remember you were paying attention before everyone else pretended they always knew what was really going on.